Um, well, as a fundamental principle, I don't believe that books are composed by God or by eternity or something. They are always composed by humans. But now, if you're talking specifically about the Rig Veda, as you said, Danastutis are there, where they praise the king for giving them gifts. Now, that can't be some eternal words of philosophy or nature or something. That is obviously some human beings, and they name the kings who give them the dana, etc. Then there are other things that are supposed to be, and it is not Indologists, but ancient Indian analysts who have said that there are certain verses in the books of Vishwamitra which are supposed to be imprecations against Vasishta, or in the books of Vasishta which are supposed to be imprecations against Vishwamitra. Then there are certain hymns, for example, the Agastya Lopa Mudra hymn and many others, which are supposed to contain so many erotic passages. And that Griffith, for example, who had a slight Victorian outlook in his translation, he has not translated them into English. He has removed those particular hymns and he has translated them into Latin, so that only the scholars, Latin knowing scholars of Europe could read them. The ordinary people couldn't. So, and he had put them in an appendix at the end of his translations. So there are many factors like that which show that there are human beings who did all this. And then there are repeated verses, the people take from Vedic repetitions are there, the same verse with the one or two words changed, which are found borrowed by a later composer. So there are many factors like that which show that it is, well, they are human compositions. And more than that, the language also, I have written that article, the chronological gulf between the old Rigveda and the new Rigveda. Now, the Rigveda contains 10 books, and the Western scholars have classified them in such a way that 5 of those books are old books and 5 are new books. And within the old books, there are certain hymns which were later, interpolations and changes and were made into it, adding new words in it. So they are called redacted hymns. I have called them redacted hymns. They have not given them any particular name. Now, you find there are certain, in this article, I have given a very long list of words which are found only in the 5 new books and in the redacted hymns. They are not found in the old books even once. And they are found in the new books around 6,000, 7,000 times. So language also changes, some words I can give you, for example, I always give this very common example of how there are 3 words for night. One is Nakt in the Rig Veda. This word has cognates in all the 12 branches of Indo-European languages, like night, for example, or noctus in um, Latin, or noshti in Russian. All these are connected to that. Then there is a word which is only found in Indo-Aryan, that is Vedic and Iranian, Avesta. That word is Shab. So you find it as Shab, Shabnam, Shabbak hair, all that in Persian words as they are used in Urdu. Kshap is the Sanskrit, Vedic and Avestan word, which becomes Shab in Persian. It is lost in Indian languages, we hardly use it. And the third word is Ratri, which is found only in the last parts of the Rig Veda, and that is borrowed by all the Indian languages, whichever language has borrowed from Sanskrit has borrowed that word. It is in Tamil also, Navaratri and all that. It is even in the Southeast Asian languages that word has been borrowed. So you find layers, linguistic layers in the Rig Veda, which show that they were composed at different periods of time when the language was changing all the time.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
I
I.
mean, on, after that, if you say, that it is divine, then it is not a thing we can discuss. It is a matter of belief that
Yeah.
they're eternal and they're not composed by men, by humans.
Hmm. Although there are certain hymns that like are composed after the rishi experiences, out of body experiences. Like there's like some of them, I think only they can be considered like a little bit divine. Otherwise,
No, no, experience means everyone gets experiences, what you can say, spiritual experiences. And if they put them down in writing, it is this thing. But
uh,
that experience is an eternal one or something. In what way, I don't know. It is humans only who experience them. No? An
Yes.
animal would not have been able to, or a plant or a rock would not have been able to express it in the form of a hymn.
Yeah, I understand. The second question that I wanted to ask is about yoga.
Yeah,
So, yoga is appropriated by Westerners today.
yeah,
Like, uh, like first it was viewed as a satanic pagan practice from the East, and now it's seen as a Christian practice. So that they are getting closer to their own gods, and they're trying to sever it from Indic roots.
yeah,
So, and there are also claims that yoga is of Buddhist origin, and Hatha yoga is borrowed from Chinese.
yeah.
So, what would you like to comment on this?
See, there is nothing in yoga by which you can connect with anything outside India. And in fact, the very fact that even in the West, all these years they have accepted it as Indian, and now there is a reactionary sort of fundamentalist uh, reaction which strives to show that it is not Indian, that it is something natural which could be done by anyone. It has no connection with India. And at the same time, there are certain other Western fundamentalists who uh, tell the people not to do yoga because it is a pagan practice and that. So both those points of view are there. Now, so far as Chinese origin is concerned, actually Conrad Hills had written an article on that saying it was of Chinese origin, and I had not read that article. But a few years ago, someone brought it to my notice and said, "What do you have to say about it?" So I've written an article about that, and I have pointed out that there is absolutely nothing. Neither does China. In fact, China says that they got yoga from India, and Indians never have said that it came from China. So one thing is that tradition. We know where something has come from. We know where Christianity came from, where Islam came from, where the Buddha lived, where Confucius lived. We know all these things. Where Plato and Aristotle lived. So all these are known things. So firstly, there is nothing which no tradition or belief anywhere in the world that yoga originated anywhere else except in India. Certainly, even it's not there in China also, and nor is it there in India. Second thing is that is one of the criteria by which any historical point can be judged. Whether it is recorded somewhere. Second point is linguistic. Like we all drink tea, and there are two words for tea: chai and tea. Both are Chinese words. One is a Mandarin word and one is a Cantonese word or something. So wherever tea has spread in the world, it has got usually one or other of these two forms. Now, actually, tea, when the Britishers started importing tea from China, then they searched in India and in Assam, they found a related species. And that is what is now called India tea as opposed to China tea. It is the same species, a subspecies of that. But in spite of that, it is still called tea because it had not been used for that purpose in Assam. We started searched for it and found it and started using it on the basis of the Chinese tea. So we can still say that tea originated in China. And how that traditions are also there, the language also proves it, because you write from English to Hindi, Indian languages, you either call it tea or chai or some form of that word. Now in India we use so many fruits which have been brought by the Portuguese from Americas, Latin America, and all of them have their original names like chiku, ananas. We know those. Of course, some have been given Indian names like sitafal and all that, but usually the names are known. Chiku also. One, I think in Karnataka, when I had gone to my native place, I found that they call it sapota. Now, both these words are actually Latin American words. So you see, there is linguistic proof also about that. I mean, for anything, if you want to find out the origin, either there is some traditional recorded memory that it came from somewhere, or else the linguistic clue tells us where it came from. In the case of yoga, neither of these two is there. Everything points towards India. So there is absolutely no reason why anyone should even say that it came from anywhere else except from India. And it is something which has been started recently in recent times, this kind of thing. It was
Yeah,
never there before.
yeah. There's also an attempt to sever yoga from Vedic tradition and say it was done by Buddhists
Yeah,
only.
but then yoga has so many different branches, even that how you cleanse your cell by breathing, and the panchakarma and all that. All these Ayurvedic and yogic techniques are all interlinked to each other. So you can take one of them and teach it in isolation also. But they are all interlinked together and they are all part of a bigger system. And it is an Indian system. There's nothing. foreign. In fact, certain things like we know judo, jujutsu, karate, all these things are they came from Japan and China, and yet Japan and China have the tradition that they were brought to them by Buddhist priests from India. So,
Yeah.
although we all know traditionally that these are Chinese and Japanese systems, still their traditions say that they came from India. So, even that is not there about in the case of yoga.
Okay. Yes, I understand. And you've also claimed that Indians borrowed astrology or Hora Shastra from Greeks.
Yeah.
What is the evidence for this?
Well, the word hora itself is a Greek word, and there is a Sanskrit text in which the 12 signs of the zodiac. They are as it is they are translated. Like Virgo is Kanya and that sort of thing, meaning the same meaning. But there are some early texts in which they actually use the Greek words in an Indianized form. Like we do in later Sanskrit, many words were borrowed from Greek like hora itself or a surung tunnel, like syringe, that what we call syringe today, that's a Greek word. Syringe, that's how it was pronounced, I suppose, in Greek, and it became surung. So there are some words like that which are known to be Greek borrowings.
Okay.
So and all these astrological, these 12 signs of the zodiac and all that, that originated in Greece. It was borrowed by ancient Indians from them.
Okay. Apart from this, is there any other evidence? Like apart from the linguistic point of
No,
view?
because there is that this thing that it is not known to the Vedic text, because the Vedic text had the nakshatra system and others. I have not studied this topic, let me tell you, so you
Okay.
cannot ask me very detailed questions about that. But I have read Conrad also and others also saying that earlier there was this nakshatra system of astrology, and
Hmm.
later it became this 12 signs of the zodiac system, which was borrowed from the Greeks.
Okay. That is interesting. And
In
this
fact,
was.
it's a side this thing. I have written an article on astrology and astronomy in which I feel I don't believe in astrology actually, and yet I find that certain things, like if people have the same sign of the zodiac, I find that they are more compatible with each other, or at least I have not found that in my case. That I'm a Leo, I find that somehow when I meet some new person and I find that I get along very well with him or her, then I just ask what is the birth date, and yes, it turns out to be at somewhere in July, August, a Leo in most cases. Now, I still read children's books that I used to read in school, like Enid Blyton and all that. And I find that three of my favorite children writers are also Leos. And so on and so forth. It goes on and on. So uh, I don't say that it may apply to everyone. In my case, I notice it as a personal thing. So there must be something in that. But now, my sign of the zodiac is Leo, but in Indian system, it is, I think, Karka or something.
Yeah.
So it is different. And I feel, that if there is a slight grain of possibility in a possibility of astrological predictions or whatever, it cannot be about events and things. It can just be about compatibility of things which have the same sort of astrological. And in that case, it is the Western system which is more accurate than the Indian one, because the Western system goes strictly by the sun. The Western year, 365 days, it is based
Yes.
on the sun. The Islamic year is based on the moon, which is why it keeps going backwards. Each Muslim festival keeps going back in time and then goes through all the seasons and comes back to that point again after a certain number of years. Whereas the Indian system goes by the sun and the moon. It keeps adjusting every 5 years with that extra month. Um, it adjusts the lunar year into the solar year. So if you go by the tithi, then the tithi is sort of an adjusted tithi between the solar and lunar things. Whereas in the Western, it is strictly according to the solar. So maybe that is why I feel, or at least that is what I have written in my article, that maybe that is why if there is any astrological thing which shows, compatibility between people of the same sign and all that, then I think it is the Western sign which is more reliable.
Okay. And yeah, coming back to the Vedas, like when do you think the tradition of Vedas being a Paurushaya started? Because even in Sarvanukramani, it says Yasya Vakyam Sa Rishi. So Rishi is the one who spoke the mantra. So essentially, the mantra where the person who appears in the first person in the mantra
Yeah,
is the rishi.
yeah,
So unless a rishi is if a rishi is like receiving this mantra from like divine like inspiration or something, he won't appear in first person. So
yeah.
even according to Sarvanukramani, even as late as that, the tradition of Apaurishaya wasn't that popular. So when do you think it started?
Well, once you look at something from a religious point of view, then this Apaurushetva thing will come in any religion, anywhere in any part of the world. So I don't think it is specific to the Rigvedic thing. Even if you go to some African tribe or something, that tribal witch doctor will say something and he will claim it has come from directly from God. That is what the writers of the Quran and the Bible claim, that it has come from the from. It is not human; it is above. So that is a common religious this thing. It is not. Uh, Logical or scientific according to me.
Okay, like when do you think it started in history?
No, how can I say when it started? Because we have had this way of looking at things from different points of view. I mean,
Okay,
every kind of thought is there in Hinduism. Every, like
okay.
Charvaka says, there is no rebirth. Existence starts with birth and ends with death. There is no heaven, there is no hell, there is no rebirth, nothing. So we have that kind of thinking also, and that is also part of our Hindu system of thought. So when one particular system started, you can't say. You need to
Okay.
find it for the first time in a book. Maybe it was started by that person, or he may have been carrying on a tradition.
Hmm.
Like Panini, mentions a long line of his predecessors, but we don't have their works. We have only his work. So we
Hmm.
don't know when something actually started, any kind of
Yeah.
thought or science.
Yeah, so like it would be helpful if you could enlighten us about how you study these texts and tell when study these texts for history, because
Yeah,
you are primarily a philologist who studies Vedic texts for information contained in them.
yeah.
So what methods do you employ and how do you know something is historical? How do you verify?
No, what I have done is, firstly, I have taken specific names, like names of people, names of rivers, names of animals. That is something specific. So I have taken all that, found out where it is found throughout the Rig Veda, and analyzed that. Then um, uh, I have used, this ancestors and descendants of
Hmm.
rishis, or
Yeah.
ancestors and descendants of kings, like Divodas was the ancestor, Sudas was. And in my very second book, the Rigveda Historical Analysis, I've used all these principles to show which parts of the Rigveda which book comes after which book, and which book is. I've given the full chronological order of the books based on a very, very many different factors, all of which converge in the same manner.
Yes. This was a question that was asked on chat.
Yeah.
So, the true question that I'm coming to is what is the historical value of Vedic texts, and why do you say it's more reliable than Puranas? Why is
Yeah.
something that's appearing in Vedas
Well,
is
let
reliable?
us take, because see, um, anything which is there as a piece of data, you will observe it and then you will derive a conclusion from it, right?
Hmm.
Now, let me give very odd example. Like, recently there was this Trump and Zelensky thing, and then people are putting up videos in which they're both boxing each other and having a physical fight. Now, a few days ago, my niece said she has taken some AI app, and then she took a video of me sitting here in front of the computer. She just said, turn around. I looked and she took a video. And then she gave some instructions to the video. And in the video, I'm actually doing all kinds of things, ridiculous things, which I would not have been doing. So if you take that and you take that as a data for how I behave or what I do, that would not be right. Correct? And
Hmm.
but that is something which has come now. But before this, whatever data we have, whatever text we have to take them as data for the particular period for which they are pertaining. Now, I think this was about Rama and Mahabharata and the Vedic texts also. Now, is that right? I mean, I thought that was supposed to be one of the topics.
No, no. The question originally was why do you consider Vedas more reliable than the Puranas?
Yeah, yeah. Because the Vedas, you can date them right from before 300,000 BC to around 1500 BC, roughly date. I'm giving the rough date, maybe 200 years plus or minus. And so they were composed over a period of 1500 years. Now, if you find that dubious, again, I'm referring to my article, The Chronological Gulf Between the old Rigveda and the new Rigveda. And you see the new Rigveda contains a huge, I have, in that article I have pointed out how the vocabulary of the new Rigveda shows a completely different technological culture in every respect. It has a huge number of new words in showing different new fields of knowledge and science and all that, which are not there in the old one. So it covers a long period of time of change. Now, um, that is the first thing. So which means that it cover from around 3000 to 1500 BC. 1000, it was composed, different parts of it. Now, as they were composed, they were kept. And here I always give Witzel's quotes. If anyone who has read my books or articles will know, I have given all his quotes where he says that the Rigveda has been preserved like a written document or a tape recording, it is better than any manuscript. And he specifically says it is better than the Hebrew text, the Chinese text, or any other text, because it has been preserved, although it was preserved orally, it has been preserved without the change of even one syllable. So,
Okay.
which is why we can identify that this contains these old words, this contains these new words. And, and it was given its final form in 1500 BC. Okay. But, and some hymns were already 1500 years old at that time. So, there must have been some minor changes made in that also. So, if the original forms of those older hymns must have been slightly different. But even after those minor changes, they still are so different that we can classify them like this as old and new. Now,
Okay.
this is the Rig Veda. Whereas if you see the Puranas, they were and the epics, they were written. They those also were old traditions, but then they were not remembered with this religious vigor and rigor that not one syllable is changed and all that. They kept on getting, and they were told to the common people as stories and all that. So all kinds of additional things, like if you listen to a kirtankara now, he's telling the story of Rama, but then he will introduce modern day politicians and modern day people, and to make it more interesting, the story. So that is what used to happen. So they were kept in orally alive, maybe for 1,000 years or so, but with constant basic and fundamental changes taking place in them. And finally, they were put down in writing in the Mauryan period. And the proof of it is that they refer to Romakas and Yavanas, that is Romans and Greeks. Now some people deny it. They say, no, no, how do you know they are Romans and Greeks? There must have been some other ancient tribes of that name. But then it also refers to the Chola, Pandya and Chera or Kerala kingdoms of the south. Now we know that they did not exist at the time of Rama or at the time of Yudhishthira. They existed during the Mauryan period. So if there, then there is one thing, reference in the Ramayana which even talks about the Buddha. Now we know the Buddha is definitely long after Rama, but he is mentioned in the Ramayana that we have today. So you see, these texts were written in 300 BC. Now, how can you take? I always give the example of one film that I had seen in the 60s. There was a film Sampurna Ramayana, in which they showed, after Sita has been abducted, Rama is roaming around in the jungle. A fruit falls in front of him. It was bursts open, and he sees Sita's photo in it, and that is why that fruit is called Sita Fal. We are told. And similarly, she sees another fruit with Ram's photo face in it, and that is why it is called Ramfal. But these two fruits were actually brought by the Portuguese from the Americas. They could not have been there at the time of the Ramayana. But the filmmakers did not know this history of those fruits. So they just assumed, nah, we can use them to show that Ram and Sita saw each other's faces in those fruits. So you see, at every period of time when the history was rewritten, people rewrote it according to the culture of their time. And they were not all experts in knowing which things were really old and which things were new.
Hmm.
So all those things kept getting added into it. Whereas in the Rig Veda, it has been preserved as it is. Final form is 1500 BC. Whereas these have been in 300 BC. So you see, there's a 1200-year gap between them.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so Rigveda is more accurate typically.
Yeah.
There are two questions from my friends. They're not able to unmute. These are two different people. One is, can you please talk about the religious beliefs across India during or after the Vedas were composed, and during and after the Vedas were composed, and how were the rest of the beliefs incorporated eventually into Sanatana Dharma? This is one of your articles also. I found it very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Please
yeah, I've
elaborate.
written in this. I think I've written it in, I don't remember now, 2, 3 articles. Maybe in the Hindutva or Hindu nationalism. Maybe also in the article are Indian tribals Hindus. I've given her this thing. I have pointed out that India had a huge number of different cultures and religions all over. And what we have today, what we call Hinduism, is basically an amalgamation of all of them. And what we call the Rigvedic culture or Vedic culture is not the ancestral parent culture of all these cultures. It was just the culture of the Northwest, Punjab, Haryana, and further north. And because that same culture is found among the Druids and among the Iranian people, the Zoroastrians, because they were, as I said, they are the descendants of the Anus, Purus, and Druyus who all lived in that area. But now, inside India, to the east of that, in say Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and South India, and further east, there were different people who were not Vedic people. They may have been, many of them may have been speaking Indo-European languages of a different kind, which now have died out in the with the passage of time, but still they have left clues in certain words in them which are not found in the Vedic language, but they are found in other Indo-European languages outside India. So, which shows that they are Indo-European words. So there were many Indo-European languages in the whole of North India, and each of those people had their own different cultures. In the Mahabharata, this Anus, Purus, and Druhyus are supposed to be all the children of Yayati, one king, which means they are all clubbed together. But the Yadus and Turvasus are supposed to be of another wife, Devyani and Sharmishta were his two wives. So three of them are the progeny of Sharmishta and two of Devyani. So there, just by classification, they're classifying already two different groups. And then when you see the Ikshvakus and other people, or even non-Indo-European language-speaking people like Dravidians and the Santali languages and all these people are also included in the sons of Manu, as per Puranic classification. But they are not in a part of the lunar or solar race. They belong to the other sons of Manu. So this is how the ancient Indians visualized India's unity. That they are all descendants of Manu, although they are all different. And many of the things, is it just a coincidence that you find this karma kand, yajnas, there's that in the Vedas, in the Avesta, and in the Druid culture also. Whereas uh, in Hinduism, we find the philosophies which come in the Upanishads. The philosophical texts are really the last parts of the Vedic culture, right? By which time they had spread right up till Bihar. And you find that all these things where certain philosophical ideas have come are connected to Bihar, not to the northwest where the Vedas were composed. Like Buddhism originated in Bihar, Jainism originated in Bihar, the Charvakas and other people also were in Bihar. And the uh, Upanishads, often they talk about discussions taking place in the courts of Janaka, who was also in Bihar.
Yes.
So you see that philosophical culture was the culture of the east of Bihar and all. Then in the I don't know if everyone will agree with this, but the story in the Mahabharata or the Krishna's life about the Govardhan Parvat. Indra Indra wants them to worship him only, but he doesn't want them to worship the forests and all that. So then he lifts up the mountain and saves them from Indra's anger. So this, I feel it is an allegorical presentation of how they asserted the culture of the Yadus, which was worshipping trees, forests, and in a different sort of thing, and not just the Vedic gods. So that
Okay.
was part of this culture. And then we have the culture of murtis, temples, that was further south in the eastern and the southern areas. And all this is now part of our Hinduism. And all of it did not originate from the Vedic culture. They are all different things which, as the Vedic culture spread all over the country, it amalgamated all these things and adopted all these things into itself and became a composite sort of banyan tree covering all parts of India. Even many
Yes.
of these gods, are which we know, they are originally local gods who were given Sanskrit uh, identities also, and then connected either with Vishnu or Shiva. All the main gods of every state in India, you will see, they are the local gods who are now just nominally connected with uh, Shiva or Vishnu. but they have their own traditions, their own forms of worship and everything like that, which is the original one.
Hmm.
So as the Vedic culture spread, we know this because see the Rig Veda is restricted to the north west, that is Haryana originally, and then spreads to Punjab right up to Afghanistan and to the western parts of UP. Then in the Yajur Veda, you find that it has spread much further east over the whole area called Aryavart. And by the time the Atharva Veda is composed, it has spread right up to Bengal. And then the later Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, Sutras, they cover the major part of North India and even go move towards the south. So as this culture was spreading all over the country, all these things were incorporated into the culture. That is, they are not new things. They are the old things which were already in those areas.
Hmm.
And they were
Uh,
just, it's like, Europeans went to America. Now we don't have the recorded versions of all the American Indian languages before the Europeans recorded them. But those languages didn't come into existence after they were recorded by the Europeans. They were already there all the time. The Europeans just recorded them. So similarly, when the Vedic culture spread all over North India and the whole of India and brought all these this thing into their texts, they were not
yes.
creating them. They were just recording things which were already there all over India.
Yeah. One of the people have a question.
Yeah,
Anshu Saxon.
Yeah, Mr. Talageri, one question. You said that Yavans and Romans, you are identifying with Greeks and
yeah.
Romans, but you are aware of the Salt Range in Punjab, right?
The
The Salt Range in Punjab, it's a huge mountain range in the
ah
Punjab hills, and it is called Romak. It's
ah
called Lavana, actually Lebanon also, as the terms get transferred. The people there eat barley, yava,
ah
and so basically, not only that, Ghazni, which is on the other side of that hills, basically when Hamir, who is now known as Mahmud Ghazni,
yeah.
attacked India, we used to call they were the Sanskrit terms called him Yavana for the
Hmm.
barley eating. Even
Ah,
1,000 years after, I mean not thousand, 500 years after, the people from Gore, the Khatris and others migrated to Bihar and were
ah,
part of the Suri race, the
yeah.
Suri tribe, Afghanistan Shesha. He called himself Yavan because he used to eat barley. So Yavan and Romak are the names which is, and there are still Pathan tribes which call themselves Romak or Yavan because I mean Ahmed Shah Abdali when he came in and he started saying everybody is one and so he started removing all the old names. But Romak and Yavan are literally the tribes which were there in Afghanistan or and the Punjab hills from the ancient times. They are not really Romans and Greeks. They unfortunately have the same name because on the other side of India, the
Hmm.
other side of the Indian culture thing is the Yavadweep, which is now called Java.
Yeah.
So do you, and in Mahabharata also, Arjun goes and he defeats the Yavans, and Pandu goes and defeats the Yavans. Arjun goes and defeats the Yavans and captures the city of Ramakas. That is basically mentioned in the Ratsuya campaign, right, in the Sabha in the Adi Parv, twice they went and defeat the Yavan kings, which are not definitely cannot be confused with the Greeks because Mahabharata at 1500 BC, Greeks were not even developing as a culture. The Mycenaeans were still evolving around 1200 BC. So it was like maybe, or whatever time where Mahabharata you want to put it.
Okay. But where do you get all these records about Arjuna going and this thing? Do you get them in the Vedic
Because in
texts?
Mahabharata, it's there in the shlokas.
Exactly.
It's
The
in
same
it's in critical
Mahabharata and the
edition.
same Ramayana, they also
Hmm.
describe how Sugriva sent people to search, sent monkeys all over
Sir,
India
you are
to
confusing
search for
Mahabharata with
Sita.
Ramayana.
Huh?
The current modern Valmiki Ramayana was rewritten after the Gupta era.
Huh?
The modern Valmiki Ramayana was written after the Gupta era. The Sanskrit
Huh?
is slightly, is a lot different from what the Mahabharata is. Mahabharata was at least 400 BC before. Mahabharata was before the Romans were Romans. Romans were not even a power at all.
No, what
When
is
the
the date you give to the original Mahabharata which refers to these Romakas and Yavanas?
I would say 4th century BC at least, because
Or,
Panini is mentioning that the
huh?
Laksh Alankar, the Laksh Alankar is a commentary written on Mahabharata. We have a Ishwar Sen's inscription around 1st century or 2nd century AD, 148 AD. We have the inscription saying that there is the Mahabharata in existence, which is of 100,000. alankars, means with the commentary is talking about the laksh alankar, means 100,000 shlokas. So 100,000 shloka Ramayana Mahabharat was exist around 2nd century AD. So basically before that, so how much time it will take to develop it? You add 500 years, generally most people do, and you come up to the 4th century BC is the era. Now the Romans cannot be there, and what? How come the Pathan tribes are calling themselves Romans for
Anyone,
1500 years
see,
after the
Pathan
fact?
tribes calling themselves Romans is something that you are getting from the last 2,000 years at the maximum. Whereas the
No, that's
Vedic
the thing.
can
Why are
go
the
back
Pathan tribes? No,
to.
Pathan tribes do not. Pathan tribes actually name. See, Pathan tribes after the Islamization make their connect to the 12 lost brothers of Joseph,
Huh.
but they are calling themselves Romans is totally different. The name Romaka was still there. Shesha Suri in Bihar, 500 years after leaving Gori and settling down in first in Rewari and there, the Suri tribe, the Suri Afghan tribe, and which basically Shesha Suri evolved from there, from Sasaram in Bihar, they are still calling themselves Yavan and Romak. There's see that the terms are still there. So basically, that is basically because of the local name of the salt range. The local Punjab salt range, which was Lavan, is salt. Romak is salt in Sanskrit.
No, this is what at the very beginning I told about the difference between the Vedic texts and the Puranic texts and all other later traditions. You cannot, uh, you know, uh, talk out a Vedic history on the basis of these texts. What these people say, and there is a book. I'm sure you know there is a astronomical text called Yavana Jataka. This is the text which contains Greek words. Now, is it just by chance that it is also called Yavana Jataka by some named by some on some Indian tribes with no connection with the Greeks? And at the same time, someone decided to interpolate Greek words in it just to confuse us and show us that it is connected with Greece. I mean, I see. I never accept all these coincidences when people want to prove something which goes against the facts. Then they call it coincidence. I have in many of my articles I have pointed out how some things in the whole Rig Veda, some word is found only in two verses. Like take the word shimyu. I think I was speaking on that also. That word is used only twice in two of the battles of the Bharatas with the Western enemies. So
Sir.
right, it is not found anywhere else. And people say no, it is just a coincidence. Now the word janavi, it is used in the book first mandala once, and in that same verse there are references to Bharadwaja and um, 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 Divodasa, and there is also a reference to the Gangetic dolphin. And say yet you say no, that Janavi does not mean Ganga. It is just by chance that Bharadwaj and Divodasa, who are connected to the Ganga, and the Gangetic dolphin, which is also connected to the Ganga, are mentioned in the same verse out of 10,552 verses. In that same verse, all these are named just by a super coincidence. So now here also it is just a coincidence that there is a text called Yavana Jatika which contains Greek words, and you are saying no, but Yavana does not mean Greek. Now I don't accept these coincidences. It is you have to take the logical connection between whatever the data is there and what it shows. Because you don't like it, you can't see. I myself, let me tell you why I went into this whole thing of historical studies. You know, in there used to be a magazine called Mirror, and in that there was an article about how the date of the Buddha is not really 600 BC, it is 1600 BC and all that. And I was so enthusiastic about it that I decided I must also do research. But then afterwards I found that this is just our Indian reluctance to accept later dates for something which we want to give earlier dates to. So
Sir,
so it is natural for us to want to like things which seem more nice to us. But in this case, there is no sense in just rejecting the words Yavana and Romaka. And they often come together also in this thing. Why should these two tribes, sounding like the names of the Greeks and the Romans, coincidentally come together? And then one text called Yavana Jataka also gives us Greek words. And then you say, no, but they are still not Romans and Greeks because we don't want to accept it. That is not a. And then you give something about what some present day tribes says, some present day people, maybe present day, I don't mean 20th century, maybe from the 10th century also, what they say, and they connect themselves with Romaka. And I mean that has no nothing to do with what the original word meant. No.
yeah, sir, we could go on, but like there are other questions as well that people wanted to ask,
Yeah.
and I don't know, like none of them are able to unmute for some reason. Like the last question is there we have to end by 6 also? Like we have other things for the fest. Like we have a fest right now, so we have like other commitments, so we need to end this talk by 6. So there's one last question that someone asked.
Okay.
So, like, is there any Vedic and historical basis to the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata? Do the characters of Ramayana and Mahabharata appear in Vedic literature? This one.
See, I have said repeatedly that the Rigveda and the was the text of the Puru tribes, who
Yes.
were natives of Haryana and surrounding areas, whereas the Ikshvakus were a totally different people to the east.
Hmm.
Now, do the Vedic texts also tell us anything about the Tamil traditions about an ancient kingdom in the south and all? They don't,
They don't.
because that doesn't mean those traditions are false. It just means that they were traditions of a totally different area, which with which the Vedic composers were not familiar. So the Rama was the Ramayana tradition was of the east of the Ikshvakus, which was not actually the tradition of the Purus. So they did not record it.
Okay.
So, but some similar name, like there is a name Lakshmana somewhere in the Rig Veda, which has nothing to do with this Lakshmana. There is a name of, obviously, we know Bharata also. Then there is the name Rama also once as the name of a donor king in the 10th book. So these are common names which appear, but they are not necessarily the same persons as in the Ramayana.
Okay. What about Mahabharata?
Yeah, yeah. Mahabharata is actually such a late text. Like they are all kurus, and the word kuru itself does not really come in the Rig Veda. One person is named Kuru Shravana, and then people say that means that he was a kuru and all. But there is no kurus are a later development. I have said, that the Rig Veda was composed somewhere from say 3500 BC to 2000 BC, but in the 10th book, hymns continued to be added till 1500 BC or so, and the entire text was given its final form in 1500 BC. So it covered this long period of time, right?
Yes, yes, it did.
So, what was the question actually now?
It the question was, is there any this Vedic or historical basis to like Mahabharata story?
Yeah, so Mahabharata, right? So the Mahabharata now, they Mahabharata king, the Kurus came into being somewhere after 2000 BC. If the Mahabharata, according to me and according to many others, including I think Conrad else, is somewhere in the second millennium BC, right? 1800 to 1500 BC. So it was in the very latest part of the Rigvedic composition at the time of the 10th book. Like Shantanu, who is an ancestor of the Kauravas and Pandavas, he is mentioned in a hymn composed by his brother in the 10th book. So
Hmm.
you see, that was the period. So they came into being at that time. So you won't find references to them in the Rig Veda itself. Now, when we come to the other Vedas, Yajur Veda was really connected with rituals. Do you know the names of all these tribes that we are talking about, Purus, Yadu, Turvasu, and all? They are not mentioned in the Yajur Veda or the Sama Veda, or the, I think, Atharva Veda also. At least I've written an article on that recently. So, because they were not concerned with all these things, they were concerned with rituals, or Sama Veda was concerned with music, Atharva Veda was concerned with medicines on the one hand and spells on the other hand, and these two were connected also in some way at that time. So they had their own concerns. So they really don't give us clues about history.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot for this wonderful session, sir. Thank you. The did the others have any other questions that they wanted to ask? I noticed that this is a very good question.
Hmm.
They're all sending it in chat. I noticed that many of the characters of Indra being called Purandara, etc., were later transferred to Vishnu.
Yeah.
Similarly, though the early Rigvedic seers were looked upon Shishna Deva, by the time of the Yajurveda, Rudra's lingas was incorporated in the like prominence in works like Sri Rudram. And there's one more question: why do you say that the conventional ordering of mandalas is flawed? This is slightly technical, but yeah, the like characters of Indra is being transferred to Vishnu, and like
Yeah.
Shishna Deva is being accepted. Shishna Deva, which is like looked upon in the earlier mandalas, is being
Yeah.
accepted. like during Yajurvedic time. What
See,
do you feel?
some people have interpreted Shishnadeva as meaning worshippers of the lingam.
Hmm.
I don't know if that is correct because I have not analyzed that sort of religious nonsense and all that. But whatever it is, it still confirms what I'm saying, that as the Vedic culture spread, it incorporated other things into it, and things which originally it may not have been part of that, it became part of the Vedic culture in later texts, not in the Rig Veda itself. So
Hmm.
that is what all these things that you're pointing out is just that.
Yeah.
And what
Okay.
about the chronology?
Yeah, the chronology. Like, if you could answer that, it would be very.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mean
The
why am I not taking the conventional numbers?
yeah. Why is mandala 1 to 10? Rigveda has 10 mandalas
Yeah,
that most people know of.
yeah,
Why are you saying that mandala 1 is not the earliest and mandala 10 is not the latest? Like
yeah,
mandala 10 is the latest, but like mandala 1 is not the earliest, but like some other mandala 6 is the earliest.
yeah. Well, right in my second book, the Rig Veda Historical Analysis, I gave all the different criteria which show this order of the mandalas. That 6, 3, and 7 are the oldest, 4 and 2 are the middle ones, and then come 5, 1, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Now I have given different criteria, means the based on the names of the composers, the names of the kings mentioned in them, and the references to other people within those hymns, and all those this thing. Also the way in which the hymns are composed. Like in the earlier books, whoever composed the hymn, he never gave his name as the composer. He gave the name of his ancestral rishi. Whereas in later mandalas, there is more personalization. That is, the actual composer's name is given as the name of the composer. So all these changes are taking place, which prove this particular order. Now, it is the Western scholars who have also accepted this order to this extent that they say that the family books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are older than 1, 8, 9, 10, because there is a completely different way in which the hymns are arranged, and a whole lot of criteria are there. Okay, so it is
Yes.
not I who am saying, they have classified it. Firstly, in my articles on chronology, I have pointed out that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are older than 1, 8, 9, 10. That is the first point. Then all of them also accept that within 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5 is closer to 1, 8, 9, 10 than the others. So they're accepting my classification. And then now recently when I wrote that article analyzing the new words in the Rig Veda, again you see that um, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 are the old books which do not have a single new word, whereas 5, 1, 8, 9, 10 have the new words. In
Okay.
as much as 7,000 times it is found in these 5 books, it is not found even once in the other 5 books.
Hmm.
So
Understood.
all these criteria are there, and as to why then did they not arrange them in that order,
Yeah.
right? If it was that, why didn't they arrange them? Book 6 should have been book 1, book 3 should have been book 2, and so on. But that is because in my article I have given the full process of formation of the Rig Veda. And the books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 were the first ones to be arranged into one text. And at that time, if you see, they were arranged verse wise. That is, book 2 has the fewest verses, book 3 has more verses, book 4 has more verses, book 5 has more verses, 6 has more, and 7 has the most. So it was arranged in increasing number of verses. But now if you look at them, you see there is a break. In the middle, suddenly, instead of having more verses, the next mandala has less verses. And then the Aitareya Brahmana explains why this is so. It points out that 6 hymns in book 3 were added later. It
Yes.
named those hymns. And when you remove those verses from book 3, then you see that they all are in increasing number. At the moment, they don't appear to be in increasing number because those later hymns added later skewed the numeral increasing tendency.
Yes. That is very interesting. Thanks a lot for this wonderful session,
Yeah,
Shrikant
yeah.
Talageri.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was an honor interviewing you, and
Thank you.
it was an honor for everyone to ask the questions. I don't know, everyone wasn't able to unmute. Everyone sent their questions on chat. Like, if you're like, is chat like accessible?
Am I audible? I'm able to unmute.
Yeah, yeah. Gandhi Gopinath.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I'm able to unmute. Not a problem. I had a question for Shrikantji
yeah.
before if you still have 5 minutes.
Yeah, of course. Please ask.
Yeah. So I put it in the chat as well. So Shrikantji, the question is, according to the chronology that you have laid out, right? So the Dasaragya happened around the composition time of the second mandala, right? Which is the mandala number 7, according to your chronology.
Book 7.
Uh, yeah. So and which is like in the during the early Rigvedic period, and that's when the
Yeah,
Anus were driven out from
yeah,
the
yeah,
Vedic homeland.
yeah,
Um, and these are the people who later became the Iranians, right?
yeah,
But later on, we find that, like in your book, you talk about the similarities between the Avesta and the late Rigveda, not the
yeah,
early Rigveda, correct?
yeah.
So it's a late Rigvedic parallel text, or probably even later, right? So the question is then, I mean, were those people, they were not living too far away, but maybe somewhere in the Iranian homeland?
Yeah, they were living in
So what
Afghanistan.
were they speaking during that time frame? Because they were driven out probably during the early Rigvedic time, and then they composed things like the Avesta during the late or
Yeah.
post late Rigvedic times. So would they have been speaking a early Rigvedic dialect in the meanwhile?
No, they were speaking Avestan, which is very closely related to Rigvedic. I mean,
Right,
there are
but
certain
the
messages.
time frame for when they were driven out, they were driven out during the early Rigvedic times, right? Because
Yeah,
the Dasaragya happened during the early Rigvedic
yeah.
times.
But
So
then
they
they
must have been
continue
speaking
to be
some
in.
early Rigvedic dialect
Yeah.
initially.
No, they continue to be in Afghanistan because in the new Rig Veda, you see that now they are no more enemies because many of the donors have Iranian names, not according to me, according to Witzel and other Western scholars themselves. And those Iranian named donors who give gifts to the rishis, they have give gifts of camels, which shows that they were in the northwest, Afghanistan, Bactria, that area. So you see, they were still in contact and they were still having a common culture, although they had gone further away. And then they had become the animosities of the past had just become a matter of legend. You know, the Devasura Sangram and all that. They had again adjusted by that time. They mean they were not any active enemies as such.
Okay, and then they moved further westwards during the later period when the new Rigveda was composed. That's when the composition of
Yeah,
Avesta and everything happened.
yeah, because the area of the Rig Veda goes right into Afghanistan and all, while the old Rig Veda did not go that far. And that Varshagira battle took place. It is found recorded in the Avestan Iranian traditions also, and in the Rigveda also. So that new Rigvedic events and the new Rigvedic language, the new Rigvedic culture was a commonly developing culture between the um, Vedic people and the Iranians.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for this wonderful session. I'll end the meeting.
Thank you, Shrikantji.
Yeah,
Is there
thank you.
anyone else? One of our like clubmates were very eager to ask questions to you. He didn't. Like, I don't. I think there was a emergency. Thanks a lot, Shrikantji.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Like it was an honor to interview you and interact with you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm ending the call.